The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Kensington Palace as William stood by the window, watching the city slowly wake up. His hands trembled slightly as he held the letter that had arrived 3 days ago. The words still felt unreal, like something from a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Kate entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea. She had been doing this every morning for the past week, bringing him tea and sitting in comfortable silence. But today felt different. Today the weight of their unspoken words hung heavy in the air between them. "The children are still sleeping," she whispered, setting his cup on the windowsill. Her voice carried a forced calmness that William had come to recognize over the years. It was the same tone she used during difficult public appearances, when the world was watching and she needed to be strong. William turned to face her, and Kate's breath caught in her throat. His eyes, usually so bright and full of life, looked tired and distant. She had watched this man grow from a young prince carrying the weight of his mother's death to a devoted father and husband. But today she saw something she had never seen before: defeat. "Kate," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk about what happens next." She nodded, knowing this conversation had been coming. They had been dancing around it for days, both afraid to voice what they both knew was inevitable. Kate sat down on the small sofa near the window, the same spot where they had shared countless quiet moments over the years, where they had discussed their children's first steps, their hopes and dreams, and their fears about the future. "The doctors were very clear," William continued, his back still turned to her. 6 months, maybe less. There's nothing more they can do." Kate felt the familiar sting of tears, but she blinked them away. She had promised herself she would be strong for him, for their children, for everyone who would be affected by this news. But sitting here in their private sanctuary, away from the cameras and the protocol, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what they were facing. "We don't have to tell anyone yet," she said softly. "We can have this time, just us and the children." William finally turned around, and when their eyes met, Kate saw the boy she had fallen in love with at university. Before the titles, before the responsibilities, before the world had placed its expectations on their shoulders, in that moment they were just William and Kate, 2 people who had found love in the most unlikely circumstances and were now facing the unthinkable. "I keep thinking about our wedding day," he said, moving to sit beside her. "How perfect everything felt. How certain I was about our future together." Kate reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers the way they had done thousands of times before. "That future is still ours," she said firmly. "It might be shorter than we planned, but it's still ours." The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of London waking up outside their window. Somewhere in the palace, staff were beginning their daily routines, unaware that the world as they knew it was about to change forever. In a few hours, their children would wake up, and they would need to find the words to explain something that no parent should ever have to explain. "I'm scared," William admitted, his voice breaking slightly. It was the first time he had said those words out loud, and Kate felt her heart break a little more. "I know," she whispered, squeezing his hand tighter. "I'm scared too. But we'll face this together, just like we've faced everything else." As the morning light grew stronger, casting a golden glow across their intertwined hands, they sat in silence, both knowing that this was the beginning of the most difficult journey they would ever take together. A journey that would test not only their love for each other, but their strength as individuals, as parents, and as public figures who carried the hopes and dreams of millions. The letter from the medical team still lay on the windowsill, its contents having changed everything in an instant. But for now, in this quiet moment before the storm, they had each other. And somehow that felt like enough to face whatever was coming next. 3 weeks had passed since the devastating news, and William had insisted on maintaining as normal a schedule as possible. Today was different, though. Today, they had planned a special family trip to their private cottage in the countryside, away from the watchful eyes of the media and the constant buzz of royal duties. Kate packed the children's favorite snacks while watching William teach their youngest how to tie shoelaces. The simple domestic scene made her heart ache with a bittersweet intensity. These moments, which she had once taken for granted, now felt precious beyond measure. "Mommy, why does Daddy look sad lately?" their middle child asked, tugging at Kate's dress. The innocent question caught her off guard, and she knelt down to meet her child's curious eyes. Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings, Kate explained gently, brushing a strand of hair from her child's face. But Daddy loves you very much, and that will never change. The drive to the cottage was filled with the usual chatter and laughter from the back seat. But William and Kate exchanged worried glances in the front. They had agreed to tell the children during this trip, in a place where they felt safe and could take all the time they needed. The cottage had always been their sanctuary. It was where they had spent their first anniversary as a married couple, where they had brought each of their children for the first time, and where they had made some of their happiest memories. The walls were covered with family photos, artwork the children had made, and little mementos from their travels together. That evening, after dinner and bedtime stories, William and Kate sat on the porch steps watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The children were finally asleep, and for the first time in weeks they had complete privacy. "I keep wondering if we're doing the right thing," Kate said, her voice barely audible over the evening breeze, taking them away from their routine, their friends. William reached for her hand, a gesture that had become even more frequent since the diagnosis. "They need this time with us, away from everything else, away from what's coming." Kate nodded, understanding what he meant. Soon their lives would be consumed by medical appointments, treatments that might not work, and the inevitable media attention that would follow once the news became public. This trip was their chance to create lasting memories before everything changed. "I wrote letters," William said suddenly, "for each of them. For their birthdays, graduations, weddings, all the moments I might miss." The words hit Kate like a physical blow, and she felt tears she had been holding back for days finally spill over. "William, I needed to," he continued, his own voice thick with emotion. "I needed to know that even when I'm not here, they'll know how proud I am of them, how much I love them." They sat in silence for a long time, holding each other as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out, and the sound seemed to echo the loneliness they both felt despite being together. "Tell me about tomorrow," Kate whispered. "Tell me about the picnic we planned." William smiled for the first time that day. "We'll take them to the meadow behind the cottage, the one with all the wildflowers. We'll fly kites and have a proper picnic with those terrible sandwiches you always make." "They're not terrible," Kate protested with a small laugh. "They're awful, and you know it," William teased gently. "But the children love them because you make them with love." As they talked about their plans for the next few days, Kate felt a glimmer of hope. Not hope that things would change or that miracles would happen, but hope that they could create beautiful memories in the time they had left. Hope that their children would remember these moments of joy rather than the sadness that was to come. Later that night, as they lay in bed listening to the peaceful sounds of the countryside, William turned to Kate. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that loving you and our children has been the greatest privilege of my life." Kate pressed her face against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Don't talk like that," she whispered. "We still have time. We still have now." And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their love and the promise of tomorrow's adventures, they chose to focus on the present, on the gift of this night, this cottage, this family they had built together. The future was uncertain, but right now they had everything that mattered. The morning at the cottage dawned crisp and clear, with dewdrops glistening on the grass like tiny diamonds. Kate woke before William, as she had been doing for weeks now, using these quiet moments to gather her strength for the day ahead. She studied his face in the soft morning light, memorizing every detail, every line, every expression of peace that sleep brought him. Their oldest child appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep. "Can we have pancakes for breakfast?" the little voice asked hopefully. "Of course," Kate whispered, carefully slipping out of bed so as not to wake William. "Let's go make them together." In the kitchen, Kate and their child worked side by side, measuring flour and cracking eggs. The simple act of cooking together felt like a small miracle. No photographers, no scheduled appearances, no one watching their every move. Just a mother and child making breakfast on a beautiful morning. "Mummy," their child said thoughtfully while stirring the batter, "I like it when it's just us. No cameras or people in suits." Kate's heart clenched. Her children had grown up in the spotlight, never knowing a life without public scrutiny. "Me too, sweetheart. This is my favorite way to spend time with you." Soon, the smell of pancakes filled the cottage, and one by one, The rest of the family gathered in the small kitchen. William appeared last, looking more rested than he had in weeks. For a moment, watching him laugh at something one of the children said, Kate could almost forget about the shadow hanging over their family. After breakfast, they set out for their planned picnic in the meadow. William carried the basket while Kate herded the children, who were excited about the kites they had brought from London. The walk through the countryside was peaceful, with nothing but the sound of birdsong and their children's chatter filling the air. The meadow was even more beautiful than Kate remembered. Wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, creating a natural carpet of colors that seemed almost too perfect to be real. William spread out the picnic blanket while the children immediately began exploring, collecting flowers and chasing butterflies. "This is perfect," Kate said, settling down beside William on the blanket. "Look at them. They're so happy." William watched their children with an expression Kate had never seen before. It was love mixed with longing, joy tinged with sadness. "I want to remember this forever," he said quietly. Every sound, every color, every laugh. As the day progressed, they played games, told stories, and flew kites until the children grew tired and hungry. During lunch, their youngest fell asleep against William's chest, and he held the child close, his eyes never leaving the sleeping face. "We should tell them soon," William said softly. "Careful not to wake the sleeping child." Kate nodded, though her stomach tightened at the thought. They had agreed that this trip would be when they shared the news, but actually doing it felt impossible. How do you tell children that their world is about to change in ways they can't possibly understand? "Tonight," Kate agreed. "After dinner, when they're calm and we have plenty of time to answer their questions." The afternoon passed too quickly, filled with more games and exploration. They found a small stream where the children could splash their feet, and William taught them how to skip stones across the water. Kate took photos with her phone, trying to capture not just their faces but the feeling of pure joy that surrounded them. As evening approached, they returned to the cottage for a simple dinner. Kate had prepared all of their children's favorite foods, and they ate by candlelight, creating a special atmosphere. The children sensed something important was happening, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. After the dishes were cleared, William and Kate exchanged a meaningful look. It was time. "Children," Kate began, her voice gentle but serious. "Daddy and I need to talk to you about something important." The room grew quiet, and 3 pairs of curious eyes focused on their parents. William reached for Kate's hand, drawing strength from her presence. "Sometimes," William began carefully, "people get sick in ways that doctors can't fix. It's not anyone's fault, and it's not because they did anything wrong. It just happens sometimes." Their oldest child's expression grew worried. "Are you sick, Daddy?" William's voice was steady despite the emotion Kate could see in his eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, I am. And the doctors have told us that I won't get better." The questions came all at once, tumbling over each other as the children tried to understand what this meant for their family. Kate and William answered each one honestly but gently, holding their children as tears came, offering comfort and reassurance that their love would never change. That night, all 3 children ended up in their parents' bed, creating a tangle of arms and legs and love that felt like the most natural thing in the world. As Kate listened to the peaceful breathing of her family, she realized that despite the heartbreak, this was one of the most precious nights of her life. 2 months had passed since that difficult conversation at the cottage, and the reality of William's condition had settled into their daily lives like an unwelcome guest. The treatments had begun, filling their days with hospital visits and medical appointments. But the doctors remained cautious about offering hope. Kate had transformed into someone she barely recognized. By day, she maintained her royal duties with grace and poise, attending charity events and public engagements as if nothing had changed. But by night, she became a fierce protector of their family's private moments, creating small pockets of normalcy in an increasingly uncertain world. Today was special, though. It was their wedding anniversary, and William had insisted on doing something to mark the occasion. Despite Kate's protests that he should rest, he had been working on a surprise for weeks, with the help of their closest friends and palace staff who had become like family over the years. Kate returned from a morning engagement to find the palace strangely quiet. Usually there was the constant hum of activity, staff members moving efficiently through the corridors, but today felt different. She made her way to their private quarters, wondering where everyone had gone. She opened the door to their sitting room and gasped. The space had been transformed into a recreation of their first date location from their university days. Candles flickered softly on every surface, and someone had managed to find the exact type of wildflowers that had been blooming the day William first told her he loved her. "Do you remember?" William's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him standing in the doorway, wearing the same shy smile he had worn all those years ago. "How did you manage all this?" Kate asked, her voice filled with wonder and emotion. "I had help," he admitted, moving closer to take her hands. "Everyone wanted to do something special for us. For you." Kate looked around the room again, noticing details she had missed before. There were photos from their courtship scattered. On the side tables, the playlist from their wedding reception playing softly in the background, and on the small table by the window, 2 cups of tea prepared exactly the way they liked them. "I know this has been the hardest few months of our lives," William said, leading her to sit beside him on the sofa. "But I wanted to remind us both of all the beautiful moments we've shared, all the reasons we fell in love." Kate felt tears threatening, but these were different from the ones she had been fighting for weeks. These were tears of gratitude, of overwhelming love for this man who, even in his darkest moments, was thinking of ways to bring her joy. "I have something for you too," Kate said, reaching into her handbag to pull out a small wrapped package. "I've been working on it since we got the news." William opened the gift carefully, his eyes widening when he saw what was inside. It was a leather-bound book, filled with handwritten pages and photographs. On the cover, in Kate's elegant handwriting, were the words, "Our story." "I wanted to write down everything," Kate explained as William turned the pages slowly. "Every conversation I remember, every silly argument, every moment that made me fall in love with you more. I thought maybe someday, when the children are older, they could read it and know how much we loved each other." William's hands trembled slightly as he read Kate's careful words describing their first meeting, their early dates, the nervousness they both felt when their relationship became public. There were pages about their engagement, their wedding day, the birth of each of their children, and countless small moments that had woven together to create their life. "Kate," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "this is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." They spent the evening reading through the book together, laughing at Kate's descriptions of William's terrible cooking attempts and crying over her words about the day each of their children was born. It was a journey through their entire relationship, captured in Kate's loving words and accompanied by photos that told the story of their love. As the candles burned lower, they found themselves talking about their hopes for their children's futures. William shared his dreams for each child, the values he wanted to instill in them, and the ways he hoped Kate would help them remember him. Kate spoke about her fears of raising them alone, but also about her determination to honor the father William had been to them. "I want them to know that love like ours exists," William said, closing the book and holding Kate close. "I want them to believe in it, to seek it, to never settle for anything less." "They will," Kate promised, "because they've seen it every day of their lives. They've watched us love each other through everything." As the anniversary celebration came to an end, Kate realized that William had given her something invaluable. Not just this beautiful evening, but a reminder that their love story was worth celebrating, even in the midst of heartbreak, that the joy they had shared was real and lasting, regardless of how their story might end. That night, as they fell asleep holding each other, Kate felt a peace she hadn't experienced in months. Whatever tomorrow brought, they had tonight. They had their love, their memories, and the absolute certainty that what they had built together would outlast whatever challenges lay ahead. The autumn leaves had begun to fall, creating a golden carpet around Kensington Palace, when William made the decision that would change everything. The treatments weren't working as hoped, and the side effects were becoming harder to hide from the children. It was time to make their situation public. Kate sat beside him in the palace's private study as he finished writing his statement. She had watched him draft and redraft the words dozens of times, each version trying to balance honesty with hope, transparency with privacy for their family. "Are you sure about this?" Kate asked quietly. even though she knew his mind was made up. They had discussed it endlessly over the past few weeks, weighing the pros and cons of making his illness public knowledge. "The children are starting to ask why I can't play football with them anymore," William replied, setting down his pen, "and the staff are beginning to notice. It's better that the news comes from us in our own words, rather than from speculation and rumors," Kate nodded, understanding the wisdom in his decision, even as her heart ached for what it would mean for their family. Once the news was public, their remaining time together would become even more precious and more scrutinized. The statement was released on a quiet Tuesday morning, and within hours, the world had stopped. News channels interrupted their regular programming, newspapers prepared special editions, and social media exploded with messages of support and disbelief. Kate watched the coverage from their private quarters, holding their youngest child who was too young to understand why everyone seemed so sad. The outpouring of love and support was overwhelming. Flowers began arriving at the palace gates within hours, along with cards, drawings from children, and heartfelt letters from people around the world who had been touched by William and Kate's story. "Mummy, why are there so many people outside?" their middle child asked, peering out the window at the growing crowd of well-wishers gathering beyond the palace gates. "Because Daddy means a lot to many people," Kate explained gently. "And when people care about someone, they want to show their support." William emerged from a meeting with palace officials looking exhausted, but relieved. The initial media briefings were done, and now they could focus on what mattered most, their family and the time they had left together. That evening, they sat down together to watch the news coverage. Kate was amazed by the stories being shared. People talking about how William and Kate's relationship had given them hope in their own lives, how their public service had inspired others to help their communities, and how their obvious love for each other had shown the world what a strong marriage looked like. "I never realized," William said quietly as they watched a montage of their public appearances over the years. "I never knew we had touched so many lives." "You did," Kate assured him, taking his hand. "We did. Together." The next few days brought an unprecedented response from around the world. Leaders from every nation sent private messages of support. Charities they had worked with organized prayer services and fundraising events. Children from schools they had visited sent artwork and letters. The sheer volume of love being directed toward their family was both humbling and overwhelming, but it was the quiet moments that meant the most to Kate. Like when their oldest child came to her room one evening with a drawing of their family, including a figure with wings labeled "Daddy when he becomes an angel." Or when William's brother called just to check in, his voice thick with emotion as he promised to always be there for Kate and the children. The public nature of William's illness brought unexpected gifts along with the challenges. Medical researchers reached out with experimental treatments and cutting-edge therapies. Support groups for families dealing with similar situations offered their resources and experience. Most importantly, the knowledge that they weren't facing this alone gave both William and Kate strength they didn't know they possessed. One afternoon, Kate found William in his study reading through some of the letters that had arrived. His eyes were red, and she could tell he had been crying. "This one is from a little girl whose father died last year," he said, holding up a carefully written note in purple crayon. "She says she wanted me to know that even though it's scary, love doesn't die when people do." Kate sat beside him and read the letter, her own eyes filling with tears. The child had drawn a picture of her family, with her father depicted as a star in the sky still watching over them. At the bottom she had written, "Love never leaves." "She's right," Kate whispered. "Love never leaves." That night, as they tucked their children into bed, each little one seemed more clingy than usual, as if sensing the weight of what their family was carrying. William spent extra time with each child, reading an additional story, singing an extra lullaby, creating memories that would have to last a lifetime. Later, as Kate and William prepared for bed themselves, she realized that sharing their story with the world had given them something unexpected. It had reminded them that their love had always been bigger than just the two of them. It had touched countless lives, inspired hope in strangers, and created a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "Thank you," Kate said as they settled into bed together. "For what?" William asked, pulling her close. "For showing me that our love story matters, that it's worth celebrating even now, especially now. And as they fell asleep surrounded by the prayers and well wishes of millions around the world, they felt less alone than they had in months. Winter had arrived early that year, blanketing the palace grounds in a pristine layer of snow that made everything look magical and peaceful. William's condition had deteriorated more rapidly than anyone had expected, and the time they had hoped for was slipping away faster than sand through their fingers. Kate had moved a bed into William's study so she could be near him at all times. The room had become their sanctuary, filled with flowers from well-wishers, drawings from their children, and the quiet hum of medical equipment that had become part of their daily soundtrack. The children had adapted with the remarkable resilience that only young hearts possess. They would visit their father throughout the day, sometimes to share stories from school, sometimes just to curl up beside him and feel his presence. Kate marveled at how naturally they had accepted this new normal, showing a maturity beyond their years. "Tell me about the snow," William whispered one morning, his voice weaker than it had been the day before. The large window in his study faced the garden, but the angle of his bed made it difficult for him to see outside. Kate moved to the window, describing the winter wonderland that had transformed their familiar landscape overnight. "The children have already made a snowman," she said with a gentle smile. "It's rather lopsided, but they're very proud of it. They've given it one of your old scarves." William's eyes lit up with the familiar warmth that had captured Kate's heart all those years ago. "I'd like to see it," he said. Kate hesitated, knowing how difficult it had become for William to move around, but something in his expression told her this was important to him. She called for help, and together with the medical staff, they carefully moved William to a wheelchair positioned by the window. The sight that greeted him brought tears to his eyes. Their 3 children were indeed playing in the snow, their laughter echoing across the quiet garden. The snowman they had built was charmingly imperfect, with stones for eyes and a carrot nose that tilted at an impossible angle. But what made William's breath catch was the careful way they had wrapped his favorite blue scarf around the snowman's neck. "They wanted it to look like you," Kate explained softly, "so you could always be part of their games, even when you can't play with them." For the next hour, William watched his children play, memorizing every giggle, every tumble in the snow, every moment of pure childhood joy. Kate sat beside him, occasionally pointing out something amusing or sharing what the children had said about their snow creation. "I want to write them one more letter," William said eventually, "together. Something they can read when they're older and might have forgotten some of the details of this time." Kate brought him his laptop, and together they composed what would become one of the most cherished documents in their family's history. William spoke while Kate typed, their words flowing like a conversation with their future selves and their children's adult hearts. They wrote about the snow day they were watching, about the lopsided snowman that represented so much love. They wrote about bedtime stories and silly songs, about scraped knees that needed kissing and nightmares that required extra hugs. They wrote about ordinary moments that had become extraordinary simply because they were shared with love. "I want them to know," William said, pausing to gather his strength, "that being their father has been the greatest adventure of my life. Greater than any royal duty, any public service, any achievement, just being their dad." Kate's fingers stilled on the keyboard as she absorbed his words. She had watched William transform from a young man uncertain about his role in the world to a father who had found his true purpose in loving his children unconditionally. That evening, their oldest child asked if they could have a family movie night in Daddy's room. Kate set up the small television, and they all piled onto the large bed together, children giggling as they tried to find comfortable positions without disturbing the medical equipment. They watched an old animated film about friendship and courage, but Kate found herself watching her family more than the screen. William's hand resting on their youngest child's head, their middle child explaining the plot in whispered commentary, their oldest trying to be helpful by adjusting pillows and blankets. During a particularly emotional scene in the movie, their youngest looked up at William with wide, serious eyes. "Daddy, when you become a star in the sky, will you still be able to watch movies with us?" William's voice was gentle but clear when he answered, "I'll always be with you, sweetheart. Maybe not in the same way, but I'll always be watching over you. And every time you see a star twinkle, you'll know I'm sending you a little bit of love." As the movie ended and the children began to drift off to sleep, Kate realized that this was the goodbye they had been unconsciously preparing for. Not a dramatic, painful farewell, but a gentle transition surrounded by love, warmth, and the absolute certainty that their family bond was stronger than anything that could threaten it. That night, after the children had been carried to their own beds, William and Kate lay together in the quiet study, listening to the soft sounds of the palace settling into sleep around them. "Are you afraid?" Kate asked, voicing the question that had been haunting her for weeks. William was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I'm afraid of leaving you to handle everything alone, but I'm not afraid of what comes next. How can I be, when I've lived a life filled with so much love?" Kate pressed closer to him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her cheek. "You're not leaving us," she whispered. "You're just changing the way you'll be with us." And in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of their beautiful life together, they both felt a peace that surpassed understanding. The morning came softly, with pale winter sunlight filtering through the frost-covered windows of the study that had become their world. Kate woke to find William watching her, his eyes holding a clarity and peace she hadn't seen in weeks. "Good morning, beautiful," he whispered, the same greeting he had given her countless mornings throughout their marriage. "Good morning," Kate replied, though something in his tone made her heart flutter with an emotion she couldn't quite name. There was a finality to it, a sense of completion that made her want to hold on to this moment forever. The medical team had been staying close by for the past few days, and Kate could see in their gentle expressions that they too sensed what was coming. But this morning felt different from the anxious waiting they had been enduring. There was a calmness in the air, as if the world itself was holding its breath in respect for what was about to unfold. "I want to see the children," William said. "All together." "One more time." Kate nodded, understanding immediately. She sent word to the children's nanny, and within minutes their 3 little ones appeared in the doorway, still in their pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. They seemed to sense the significance of the moment, moving more quietly than usual as they approached their father's bed. William gathered them close, his arms somehow finding the strength to hold all 3 as they snuggled against him. Kate watched from nearby, capturing the scene in her memory with the intensity of someone who knew she was witnessing something sacred. "I want you to remember this," William said to his children, his voice soft but clear. "I want you to remember that you are loved beyond measure, that you are brave and kind and capable of amazing things, and that no matter what happens, I will always be proud to be your father." The children listened with the solemn attention they usually reserved for bedtime stories, though Kate could see that their oldest was beginning to understand the weight of these words. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back, knowing that this moment needed to be about love, not sadness. "Will you tell us a story, Daddy?" their youngest asked, settling more comfortably against William's chest. William smiled, and for a moment Kate saw a flash of the vibrant man she had married. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a prince who thought he knew everything about being royal. But then he met a beautiful, smart woman who taught him that the most important thing about being a prince wasn't wearing crowns or living in palaces. It was learning how to love." As William continued the story, weaving their real-life love story into a fairy tale their children could understand and cherish, Kate felt time slow down around them. This was their family in its purest form, love made visible, connection that transcended physical presence, and bonds that nothing could break. The story lasted nearly an hour, with William describing their courtship as a grand adventure, their wedding as a celebration of true love, and the birth of each child as the arrival of the most precious treasures in the kingdom. By the time he finished, all 3 children had drifted off to sleep in his arms. "Help me remember everything about this," William whispered to Kate as they watched their sleeping children. "The way their hair feels against my chest, the sound of their breathing, the weight of them in my arms." Kate moved closer, carefully positioning herself so she could touch each of their children while remaining close to William. "I'll remember for all of us," she promised. As the day progressed, friends and family came to say their quiet goodbyes. William's brother arrived with tears in his eyes but a smile on his face, sharing memories of their childhood and promising to watch over Kate and the children. Palace staff members who had become like family over the years stopped by to express their love and gratitude for the privilege of serving their family. But as evening approached, It was just the five of them again. Kate had arranged for the children to sleep in the study that night, bringing in their favorite blankets and stuffed animals to create a cozy nest around William's bed. "Tell me about tomorrow," William said to Kate as they settled in for the night, echoing the conversation they had shared at the cottage what felt like a lifetime ago. "Tomorrow," Kate said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "The children will wake up and we'll have breakfast together. We'll talk about you and remember all the wonderful stories you told us. We'll look at the pictures in the book I made and we'll feel how much you love us." "And after that?" William asked, his breathing becoming more labored. "After that, we'll live the beautiful life you helped us build. We'll be brave and kind, just like you taught us. We'll help others the way you always did. And every single day we'll carry your love with us." William smiled, his eyes beginning to close. "That sounds perfect." Kate held his hand as he slipped into sleep, their children peaceful around them, the room filled with the quiet sounds of a family at rest. She stayed awake through the night, watching over all of them, memorizing these last precious hours of being complete. When morning came, William was gone, but the love he had filled their lives with remained as strong as ever. The children woke peacefully, somehow understanding without being told that their father had begun his new journey as their guardian angel. In the days that followed, as the world mourned the loss of a beloved prince, Kate found strength in the legacy William had left behind. Not just in the public service and charitable work that would continue in his name, but in the love that had created their family and would sustain them through whatever came next. The silent goodbye they had shared wasn't silent at all, Kate realized. It had been filled with every word of love they had ever spoken, every laugh they had shared, every moment of joy they had created together, and that conversation would continue for the rest of her life, carried in her heart and in the hearts of their children, a love story that death itself could not end.